First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled, excited, and honored to be with you today. My lecture will be about how can we gain without pain. Let's start from the beginning. Physical activity increases cardiovascular fitness, muscle mass, healthy blood glucose regulation happens like that, reduces visceral fat, triglycerides, low-density lipoproteins. On the other hand, sedentary lifestyles that promote adipose tissue accumulation, systemic inflammation, oxidative damage, and chronic pain. And this is the prelude for medical disorders. There will be a lot of excuses why you cannot exercise. Time restraints, career responsibilities. There is a movement restriction due to obesity or aging, chronic pain, individual choices. Exercise also demands commitment, time, energy, stamina, and persistence. And as a result, over 1 billion of individuals are now obese. Obesity leads to insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, which kills about 18 million individuals yearly. Visceral adipose tissue will lead to excess triglycerides, lipotoxicity, inflammation, non-alcoholic steatosis, the fatty liver, and cirrhosis. And this is what fatty liver looks like, not a pretty sight. This is what triglycerides is. You see how all these triglycerides are going inside your arteries and basically obstruct your blood flow. There is another major problem with visceral fat. It basically has the highest number of ACE2 receptors. This is the receptors in your cells that COVID-19, the spike of COVID-19, connects, fuses, and releases the COVID-19 contents into your cells. And that's when it hijacks your cellular machineries and starts duplicating itself. So the greater the amount of fat, the greater danger for severe symptomatology and for COVID-19 taking over. Whereas muscle has the least ACE2 receptors, and immediately comes to mind that if only we could change fat with muscle, we could somewhat protect ourselves from the virus spreading inside our bodies. Recently, I published a book on COVID-19, and it's called Checkmate by a Protein Invisible Enemy, and how dangerous it is because it mutates. As it mutates, it becomes more contagious, unlike previous viruses that when they mutated, they became extinct. And also, what are the, like if we can use exercise and alternative to exercise to strengthen our immune system and basically help us protect ourselves from the disease taking over us and killing us. There are several ways in the market that can reduce fat, lasers, radiofrequency. There are no peer-reviewed radiofrequency studies on visceral fat reduction, however. Yes, subcutaneous fat is great, but not the visceral fat. And that's what holds all the inflammation and toxicity, quite a lot of it. And there are laser studies that report that there has been a visceral fat reduction. However, what they do, they combine laser treatment and exercise. So we don't know if it was the laser treatment or the exercise that gave you the results. And additionally, these studies, when they're duplicated, they do not offer external validity because when they're duplicated, they don't get the same results. They don't get visceral fat reduction that they got in the first study. Another issue is laser RF lipolysis releases triglycerides, glucose, and toxins in the bloodstream, and without exercise, they actually remain in the bloodstream and they clog the arteries. Now, remember the toxicity part. Toxicity, that is a lot in visceral deposit, no fat, increases hunger. Why? Because it interferes with your entire endocrinological system. It interferes with insulin and leptin resistance. It basically promotes insulin and leptin resistance, and interferes with the appetite controlling hormones, ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is an orexogenic hormone, basically increases appetite. Leptin decreases appetite, is an anorexic hormone. And because these are imbalanced, hunger increases. So toxicity increases hunger. The more toxic you are, the more hungry you are. So what can we do? How can we basically deal with the visceral fat that doesn't just wrap itself around its organs, but as you can see, it invades them? Like this is the fatty liver. It's invaded the fatty liver, cannot allow the liver to function. So it cannot be removed with radio frequency or lasers or ultrasound, or not from liposuction, obviously, or plastic surgery. But what can we do about it? And why is visceral fat a problem? Again, inflammation and toxicity. I have all of these studies on the right that say just that. Visceral fat will create diabetes, cardiovascular disease, injury, infection, arthritis, Alzheimer's, asthma, lung cancers, and so on and so forth. So we have slimming with lasers and IREPAIR and other methods. However, neither laser nor IREPAIR nor liposuction or plastic surgery will increase metabolism or balance hormones or decrease hunger. Therefore, results will rebound. Whereas fitness is a safer way of getting to that goal because it increases metabolism, balances hormones, reduces hunger. Therefore, there will be no rebound of results, which is the desirable effect. Now, a lot of results we can get with exercise. Exercise will reduce the visceral fat and will reduce BMI and give us fitness. However, BMI does not go down with just 4 months of exercise. It takes much longer. Also fitness. You see visceral fat reduction, but you don't see the fitness or the BMI decrease in a very short time. 4 or 5 months. It takes much longer. And of course, exercise balances hormones, but it's easy to exercise if you're young and fit. But what about if you're overweight or if you're old? That's not as easy. Now, very strenuous exercise that's necessary to get rid of visceral fat. With overtraining, you cause hormonal imbalance. Cortisol and testosterone have this inverse relationship. When cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. So during exercise, you're straining yourself, you increase the cortisol. For some reason, testosterone will go down. So you basically start losing weight, but because your cortisol is up and increases your hunger, and your testosterone is down, you have a weight gain again. You have visceral fat increase, you have low sex drive, low energy, higher susceptibility to infections. And it's basically all the benefits of exercise are compromised. There is another technology that came out of London University, and there's a lot of publicity on that. It's a simulated effortless exercise by Gerry Pollock, who was also the co-inventor of the first pacemaker. And he started 27 years of research. Now we have about 40 years of research on this same technology. Initially, Goldberg in London University looked at gene expression and he found a rapid muscular hypertrophy, 250% increase in the RNA content of the muscles, and repression of the fast type genes and activation of the skeletal slow type genes. Now, what does it do? I'll show you how basically how you can see visually the contraction, very slow contraction, starts very, very slow, basically slow motion. But you can do that with exercise, but it takes a lot of stamina and a lot of effort. And it's 8 seconds. It's not like the muscle stimulators that send electrical currents to depolarize individual small muscles leading to bridges. This is like an exercise that happens that your body, your entire body participates. And there is a lot of papers, most of which I wrote, and in many different journals. In the Journal of Aesthetic Nursing, there is a paper with exactly the same name of this lecture, again without pain, beyond sports, effortless exercise solution. We cannot find all that in Google Scholar. If you go there and you put my name, Sonia Sofra, you can see all the articles, scientific research publishing, more articles. These are all clinical trials and other publishing journals, different journals, so Journal of Endocrinology, Metabolism Research, other journals. And let me give you what basically is the procedure, more or less. First is a blood test with a test for different variables, metabolic, P3, CRP, that's inflammation, fasting, BP, NBP, insulin and glucose. If you do diabetics and pre-diabetics, then you have a pre-pudendal scale measurement that measures BMI, overall fat, VAT, and muscle mass. You have sonograms, and you do the procedure. You do a 1 hour procedure, 12 or 15 treatments, and then you test the same variables again, and you do sonograms again to compare before and after on the same subjects. And what we saw, you can see the results on testosterone and cortisol. What you see is that all subjects, cortisol went down, testosterone went up. That's the opposite that we saw with exercise here. With exercise, cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. Here, the mean average testosterone increase was plus 42.23%, and the cortisol decrease percentage was 18.42%. Leptin and ghrelin, very important. What you saw is that leptin, the anorexic hormone, went up plus 10.82%, and the ghrelin, the orexogenic hormone, the one that increases the appetite, went down 7.35%. Very important. All of these fluctuations were within the normal range, because you don't want the leptin to be too high, then you have hyperlipidemia. Now, you don't want the ghrelin to go very low, because ghrelin is anti-inflammatory. So it has to be within the normal range. And that's what we saw, that basically people that had higher, above the normal range, it was reduced, and those who had below the normal range, it was increased. Now, what we saw with blood glucose, with diabetics, fasting and PP, what we saw is that you see how the diabetics, they had fatty liver previously and diabetes, they went down. The blood fasting glucose percentage was 38.44%, but you can see that most of them, some of them got to the normal level, but a lot of them got into the pre-diabetic, like a step down. And the PP glucose, again, was minus 39.1%. And again, some of them got down to even from diabetic to normal. And a lot of them went from diabetic to pre-diabetic. And when we looked at pre-diabetics, most of them went down to normal. A couple of them remained at the diabetic, pre-diabetic level. Both the fasting insulin and the PP insulin. And we found a fasting insulin decrease of minus 54.52%, and the PP insulin decrease was minus 44.7%. Triglycerides, we did it different for diabetics and pre-diabetics, but we did not want to confound the results. And we found a percentage of the triglycerides decrease was minus 28.56%. And the high density lipoprotein, because you want the triglycerides to be down, high density lipoprotein to be up, that was increased by 49.12%. And as you can see, most diabetics went to the normal level, and some of them remained in, but they were all improved. And same thing with the HDL, most of them improved, and some of them got into the normal level. Now, when you looked at pre-diabetics, the results obviously were much better, because they were much better off to start. They were healthier to start with. So average decrease in triglycerides was minus 22.88, and the increase in DHDL was 30.34. And you can see most of them went from pre-diabetic levels went to normal levels. And again, with the HDL, went to the normal level of HDL, which is very significant because you make these people be healthier. Now, BMI, overall fat, visceral fat, skeletal muscle mass. What we saw is BMI decrease was minus 7.5. Mean average overall fat decrease was minus 26.14. Mean visceral fat decrease was minus 28.17. Mean SMM increase was plus 28.02. Now, remember, if the diabetics and pre-diabetics, they're not going to show as much as a normal person. Normal people show much higher visceral fat decrease, but the diabetics, pre-diabetics, they just need more treatments. And this is the t-test statistical significance results. Everything was very highly significant. Blood glucose fasting NPP for the diabetics, insulin fasting NPP for the pre-diabetics, triglycerides for the diabetics and the pre-diabetics, and also the upper abdomen reduction CM was minus 965. Only 12 treatments for that. That's all we got measurements. Umbilicus reduction CM was minus 1032, and lower abdomen was minus 11.5. We saw an inflammation decrease that was significant, very significant. BMI decrease was very highly significant. Overall, visceral fat decrease, very highly significant. Remember, all people with fatty liver, after sonogram reports, we saw no fatty liver after the 15 treatments. Skeletal muscle mass increase, very significant. HDL for pre-diabetics and diabetics, again, we separate them. Very significant. Free, the metabolism was significantly improved. This is after 3 treatments. We could only use certain pictures that people gave us signed release forms for. This is 6 treatments. Before and after 15 treatments. Before and after 15 treatments. This is some people got amazing results. Some of them more moderate results, depending on their body and metabolism and where they started and how healthy were to start with. Before and after 15 treatments. This one, before and after 15 treatments again, this particular one. Now, in other studies, what we did is we looked at creatinine and bilirubin. Creatinine exits the body as a waste product. And bilirubin, basically, if you have it in excess, indicates liver problems. The reason why we looked at those 2 variables is that so many papers, research papers on COVID-19 patients, they indicated that they had elevated creatinine and bilirubin. They were even looking at them as markers of the illness, of COVID-19 illness. And what we found is the mean average creatinine percentage decrease was minus 19.67, and the mean average bilirubin decrease percentage was minus 69.23. So that was very, very significant again. We looked, of course, at the CRP, inflammation, that is very important. And cortisol, again, we saw a minus 17.47% in cortisol percentage decrease. Everybody had that result, but it's how the percentage with which it was decreased, but everybody had a cortisol decrease. And mean average CRP decrease was minus 36.87%. Again, everybody, the CRP was decreased in all subjects, 100% of the subjects. And what we saw, again, the mean average VLDL decrease was minus 8.13. This is percent. That was more, not as health. There was hypertension, there was CVD, diabetes. So the more advanced the medical disorder, the more time they need to go back to the normal status. Again, mean average triglyceride decrease was minus 14.49, again, because that sample had major problems. VLDL, triglycerides, free T3 metabolism, bilirubin, creatinine, CRP, cortisol, HDL, that's the high density lipoprotein, the good cholesterol, visceral adipose tissue, BMI, and of course the reduction of CM in the umbilicus and above and below the umbilicus were all very, very highly significant. according to the statistical stats. And this is before and after 15 treatments. This is only one treatment. This is again only one treatment. This is one treatment, and you can see the muscle toning of even one treatment that you could see happening. And that's why we included this picture. You can see that it works very fast. It's a high-speed, effortless exercise, basically. And this is our clinical research board. We have more clinicians now that they conduct research for us. And it's international. It's from England, United Kingdom, Aruba, Netherlands, India, Japan, United States, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And with this, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to give you all this information. And if you do have any questions, please get in touch with me at science@ielios.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have and also give you any research papers that you would like to have. Thank you very much again.